Hello and welcome to Norwood Digest. We have a very special guest today. It's Chief Brooks, and Chief Brooks has been in the law enforcement business for about 48 years. Am I close?
I'm in my 40. I just started my 48th year. Yes.
So the big news around town is that the chief has decided to retire at the end of April, and we thought it'd be a good time to come in, review, his career and see what's up for the police department going forward. So first of all, Billy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I was trying to think when the first time we met, and it was, 83, so that's 1731. Wow. 41 years ago we met.
Time.
You had just come to Norwood from Westwood, right?
From the Westwood Police, that's
Yeah.
right, to the Norwood Police.
So let's just go through chronologically, if you don't mind, your career. Did you start with Westwood?
Sure. So I grew up in Westwood, and everybody was civil service in those days, and you got preference for the town where you live. I actually grew up next door to the Westwood police chief, who would occasionally race off to something interesting, and I began to think that would be interesting. So I took the civil service test here at Norwood High, and my semester break senior year, I got a card in the mail, and things moved much more quickly then. And by the time I went back to college for the second semester of my senior year, I'd been appointed to the police department. And I actually worked 4 to 12 at the police department and finished up college during the day.
And where'd you go to college?
Stonehill.
Okay. Both of my brothers went there. Did you take criminal justice there?
I took criminal justice. I actually started at Boston College taking business because the FBI was hiring accountants. Mm-hmm. And so I started there, but I was not doing very well in accounting. So I transferred over to Stonehill and did my junior and senior year there. And criminal justice program was brand new. And for them to actually have somebody who hadn't yet graduated who would become a cop was kind of a thing. So I actually didn't go to the police academy until I had 2 more weeks left at college, and my professors were good and either gave me papers or work something out. And so that's actually when I got the job.
Wow. And how long did you work for Westwood?
So I was there for 5 years. I worked on patrol, and that's where being 21 and a half, I probably had no business being a cop. But back in those days, on nights, you worked in 2-man cars. So I worked with great people that really broke me in and showed me the ropes and that sort of thing. So I was there for 5 years. I was looking for a little bit more excitement, and I had applied for a job with the DEA, and I was pretty much lined up to go to the DEA, and President Reagan became president and froze federal hiring. That wasn't happening. And almost really on the heels of that, George de Blasio became the Norwood police chief, and he was my lieutenant in Westwood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he said to me, around the time he was getting the job, he pulled me in and he said, "I know DEA didn't work out, and I know you're looking for something, a little, kind of a change of pace, and consider Norwood as a potential." So he came here in November of 1981, and he showed up at my house, the following spring, and he says, "We've got a vacancy. Are you still interested?" And I said, "Sure," and I transferred over, and came into the Norwood Police.
So that was the first time you came to Norwood?
That was my first time. And I worked, and he's there's a lot of great George de Blasio stories. But he said to me, he says, "I can get you in, then you're on your own.
Yeah.
You want to make sergeant, you got to top the test." So, okay. And so I didn't top it, but I scored well enough to make sergeant after I was here about 3 years. And then I made detective sergeant 6 months later, which was fast. And so of my 18 years here, I worked in the BCI as the detective sergeant for 14 of my 18 years.
Wow. And then when did you go to Wellesley?
So I got a call from the Wellesley chief, who I'd actually only met a couple of times. And he said, "I'm looking for a deputy chief from outside the department." And he said, "I got 2 lieutenants. One's out injured and the other one's my brother." So I need a deputy chief from the outside. And he said, "I'd like somebody with an investigative experience, maybe somebody's been to the National Academy and somebody's done some internal affairs work." And he started kind of ticking off the, and I finally interrupted him. I said, do you want to be on the panel? He said, "No, I want to know if you're interested." And kind of caught me really off guard. I gave it a lot of thought. I really struggled with it. Again, enter Chief de Blasio, who says, "Hey, listen, this is a great opportunity." I just loved being a detective sergeant.
Right.
I loved that job. we were working narcotics. There was a million things going on. Norwood, there's just a little bit more going on right then. And so I really struggled with it, but I did. I went over to Wellesley. There was a process, and I had to compete in the process, but the chief was inviting me to enter it. And so that's what I did. And I arrived there in April of 2000. And I had been there about 3 days, and he walked in and he said, we're having a meeting right after lunch about the marathon. I said, yeah, it goes near here, doesn't it? He said, we've got the middle 5 miles, he said. He says, no, I'm not going to be here. And I said, what do you mean you're not going to be here? He said, that's okay, it'll be fine. They always take the same route, everything. We use the same plan. So in any event, that is a real understatement about running the Boston Marathon. So I was there for 13 consecutive Boston Marathons with the middle 5 miles. And it was a great department, very nice community. They were very, very nice to me, and I was there just 12 years. And I was telling the selectmen last night, again, and to Chief de Blasi, who I've always kept in touch with. And we were talking on the phone one day, and he said, we knew that Chief King was coming up on retirement, and I had not shopped myself around for chief's jobs, but I told Chief Cunningham that I really would be interested in Norwood. I love the Norwood police in the town. And Chief de Blasi said to me, you don't want the town of Norwood to come up with a program, with a process that would exclude you. And it might just be worth mentioning to John Carroll. And I remember hanging up the phone, talking to him, and I called Norwood Town Hall. I got Debbie Melcher.
Yeah, sure.
And she said, hey, Billy, what's going on? I said, can I get in to see John? Yeah, you want to come today? Sure. So I drove over, and John used to sit facing the door. And I walked in and I said, hello, how are you? And he said, this is about the chief's job?
You could never fool him.
Wow. Wow. And this is about 6 months before Chief King was due to retire. And I said, as a matter of fact, yes. He said, I'm going to stay inside the department. I said, okay. I like to be able to think that I think of my feet. I don't always, but I said, that makes perfect sense. He said, you think so? I said, yeah. I said, just do me a favor. He said, well, yeah, what's that? I said, think of me as an internal candidate. I was here for 18 years. I ran detectives for 14. Every mess that came down the pike got, and I never let you down. And he, how's everything else going? And completely changed the topic. So anyway, we visited for a little bit and I left, and that is what it is. But when the posting came out, it said you had to have served in a supervisory capacity at the Norwood Police for 5 years or more. And I said, that's me.
See, he listened.
I fit there.
Yeah.
As well as everybody else who was in the command staff at the department. So there was a process, and I competed with other people who were at the police department, and I was picked. And just to back up just a bit again, and to Chief de Blasi, when it was posted and I submitted my resume and all the rest of it, he called me up in the office one day. I was in Wellesley. I remember sitting at my desk, and they just, hello. I said, how you doing? He said, you've applied for the chief's job. I said, I have. He says, there's going to be a selection panel. I said, okay. He said, I'm on it. I said, uh-huh. He said, and this will be the last time you and I talk until that's over. Yeah. I said, roger that, Chief.
Yeah.
Click, and he hung up, right? End of it. That was the last time we spoke, until John called and told me that I had the job, because that's Chief de Blasi. It's straight as an arrow and right down the pike, and that's the way he operates, and the way he always did. So
he was the chief when I first became moderator, so I dealt with Chief de Blasi quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah.
I won't say who, but he used to say to me, if a certain town meeting member raises his hand if I'm looking for a new car or something, he said, call on him, because he'll speak against it, and I know that'll get me 10 more votes on my side. But I won't disclose who it was.
Okay. I got some guesses,
Yeah.
but because I remember those days. But so then I came back and I stepped into the department. Look, it's always been a wonderful police department. It really has. I think a lot of departments in the area, I think sometimes they get their ideas from looking at the way we do things. Sometimes that's the case, and we've just always had a good reputation.
And what year was that you became chief? I forget.
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, 2012. So I was in Wellesley almost exactly 12 years. And when I retire the last day of April, it'll be exactly 12 years here.
Oh boy, how about that?
Yeah. I gave Mr. Mizuko my notice on the last day of my 47th year. Dates kind of mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I gave him my notice that day, swung by and saw him. And then when I leave, it'll be exactly 12 years. And May 1st, when the new chief gets sworn in, is the department's birthday.
Oh,
May
wow.
1st, 1896, which was the
Now
day
you sounded like Brian Murphy.
oh, my God. Well, he didn't tell me. Yeah, he told me like about 3 weeks later, you got sworn in on the department's birthday. I said, you couldn't have told me that ahead of time? But, yeah, so dates mean something to me, and the gap between my giving my notice and when I leave will allow the general manager to name a new chief, and then will allow us to make the interim. He's going to stay inside, he's already said, so which I think is very good. Support 100%. That'll allow us to make those all those other promotions through the department, so that when I do leave, and I'm hoping that we're all done with all of that by then.
Sure.
That everything will be settled and in place, and that means a lot to me.
And I mean, obviously, it sounds like you've had a succession plan in your mind. It wasn't something you just willy-nilly did.
It's one of those things you kind of pick away at, because you can't get here and after 3 years say, this is my succession plan,
Right.
because things change.
Right.
But you've got to be thinking about, well, this is his strength or her strength, and I can see this going this way, or so it's one of those things you kind of pick away at and you keep in the back of your mind. But and you don't always have that choice.
Right.
But in this case, I think we do. I think that we have people at every rank who would be 100% successful at the next rank, and so we can make those moves.
All right. So, I mean, we're in our 48th year, so a lot has changed since the first time you raised your hand and were sworn in.
Oh my, yeah.
How would you characterize like the biggest changes, or the changes that might, well, talk about the biggest one, then talk about one that people might not be aware of.
So, it's funny, I was talking to one of the officers the other day, and we said, oh yeah, you've been a cop a long time. I said, I became a cop when Jimmy Carter was president, if that helps you any, so it's, you think back to those days, and some kind of this superfluous stuff, none of the cars had air conditioning, all the windows cranked down, we carried revolvers, there was no soft body armor, there was none of that. Heroin was only in the cities, cocaine hadn't been heard of yet, at least really not to any degree. It was marijuana, a little bit of LSD, and those were the drug issues. There was more crime then. In the 70s and 80s, there was a lot more crime.
We had a tough economy then.
That we see today. Yeah, tough economy, and just for whatever, all the other things that go into driving crime, there was just more of it. So there were more robberies, there were more house breaks. I've said to people recently, here's a crime shift that, like, we don't have house breaks like we had even 6 or 7 years ago. People don't steal that way. They call you up and they scam you on the phone, or they hack into an account,
Right.
or they steal and wash checks, or they use something more sophisticated. And that's been a shift in property crime. Massachusetts used to be the number one auto theft capital of the country. Remember, the governor's auto theft strike force was out there, chasing around people who stole cars. And now you really can't steal cars unless you have the fob. Now we're starting to see that shift, because TikTok videos have come out on how you can steal Hyundais and Hondas, with a USB port, with the USB, and there's TikTok videos that show you how to do that. So now you see auto theft starting to inch back up. So the changes in the job, aside from those crime shifts I talked about, and changes in drugs, we saw our job then, I think, as law enforcement, and we were more statistically driven. Departments quantified what you did a little bit more. How many tickets did you write? How many arrests did you make? And an officer who made a lot of arrests was seen as being a better officer, and an officer who seldom made an arrest was seen as not quite keeping up. And now, of course, there's been a complete shift in that we try to solve problems,
Right.
and try to prevent crime, and try to see things coming before they arrive. We had a so-called grandparent scam last week, and
I saw that.
And right from the AM briefing that we hold every morning at the department, I texted Kevin McDonough Jr., and said, will you get something on Facebook about this grandparent scam that's still coming around, to warn people, to help head it off. So there's more of that. There's less emphasis on statistics, less, I think, on outputs and more on outcomes has been the shift.
It's a good way of putting it.
Law enforcement, we don't enforce the law for the purpose of enforcing the law, because it's a law, so it's got to be enforced. There was much more of that in the 70s and 80s. And now it's, You know, I was at a conference, I was at the International Association of Chiefs of Police conference just last year, and there was a guy speaking, and for your viewers, Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. He's an amazing speaker to listen to. He says, look, you do law enforcement, but you don't enforce all the laws all the time, right? And there's like 3,000 police chiefs in the room. You don't do that all the time. You protect public safety, but firefighters do it too, right? So it's not that. Like, what do you do? You know, what do you do? And he finally said, you protect the public from harm. You protect the vulnerable from harm. Right? And that's what you do. If people are addicted, they're vulnerable. If they're poor, you know, if they've been bullied, if they're elderly, you know, then there's an increased vulnerability. And what do the police do? We protect them from harm, and that's what we do. So that shift in how we look at function in society and what we do, that's been a change. And now we don't, you know, I have a sense maybe for this officer maybe makes more arrests in the course of a year than that officer, but a lot of our arrests are domestics, which are driven by their reactive, not proactive arrests.
Right.
You know, we do have officers that proactively will, you know, make drug arrests, you know, maybe more than the next officer. But, you know, I'm just as happy with the officer who circles back on a neighborhood dispute and goes back to make sure that the conflict doesn't continue to exist so that we don't have to go back and there's less disruption in the neighborhood. That we circle back, and something we did when I was in detectives years ago would be to go out and talk to people who are drug addicted before they overdosed and before they got arrested, to tell them, listen, there are detoxes, you know, and there's outpatient, and here are some of the places you can go. And now Officer Ryan Marchant and Officer Brian Cedrone, you know, do that and reach out to people, and so there's been a shift there. So there's a little bit less emphasis on numbers, a little bit more on outcomes and prevention and that sort of thing.
And so I think when I first moved here, I didn't see police walking the beat, if you will, like I do now. Is that
You're probably right.
all over the place, or is that unique here to here?
No, I think you're right, and I think we do a lot more of it, really, than most departments. And again, I keep saying, I don't compare us to other police departments. You know, we compare. You know, our mission is to address the forces of evil and disorder, right? not to compete with other police departments.
Yeah, you're competing with the Marvel agents, right?
Right. But I think that it's. I think you're right. I think we do focus on foot patrol much more. So back in the, obviously back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, there was a lot of foot patrol, and then the kind of progressive area of policing that really started in the 70s, kind of the Adam 12 era and so forth, and rapid response and how response times and efficiencies and equipment, that sort of thing. You know, you saw more of that, and de-emphasizing foot patrols. And again, I'll circle back to Chief de Blasi. He came up with a concept years back of walk and talks. Now we're just going back to calling them foot patrols, but he said the officers on beats, I'm going to give them cars in case we need them to respond as backups. And the officers who are in cars, I want them to do foot patrols. So I want there to be a meshing, I want there to be a better blend. Maybe that's oscillated a little bit over the years, but certainly when I came here, I wanted the beats to be out on foot and walking and talking to the merchants and being helpful to the people along their beats. And then I also wanted the officers in cars to do foot patrols. And all units do foot patrols, all shifts. The midnight shift does their foot patrols in the hotels, gas stations, CVS, places like that. Now when we have something going on at a hotel, the officer walks in, the clerk already knows him.
Right.
You're not startled because a policeman walks into your lobby because they're there all the time.
Right.
All the time. We've actually also, taken the foot patrols of the officer, one officer in the business district uptown, the other one walking South Norwood, and I've told the sergeants, look, I leave the authority in your hands. Double them up, put them on bicycles, and have them run the whole of Washington Street. Do that too. Take the South Norwood beat and the Uptown beat, pair them up, and have them walk as a pair, as long as they cover both beats.
Right.
Because I've seen that the officers walking in pairs actually seem to engage more with the public, and the public is freer to approach them and more readily approaches them than if it's just somebody kind of sauntering on their own. So we do emphasize the foot patrols, and was just talking to Jack Tolman as I was walking in here. We were chatting, and he mentioned foot patrols. It's one of the three biggest compliments I get about the department.
Yeah.
Foot patrol. We love, and people see it all the time. We love to see the officers on foot patrol.
And I love to see them when they're interacting with the kids in the neighborhoods.
Yes, because now the ones that are out on the beats, that's what they do. They'll go down to a public housing. They'll go to a neighborhood. They'll stop at a school. One of the things we did, we've always stopped at the schools. I'm always stopping at schools around dismissal. And sometimes we'll pop in at a recess, and the officers do that. But after the Uvalde shooting, we're just, again, talking about it in the AM briefing. One of the times when our students are really vulnerable are drop off in the morning, pick up in the afternoon, and recess.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the time here in Norwood, the schools are locked down. And so they're really pretty well protected. And we've got school resource officers at the middle school and high school, and then school liaison officers popping in and out of the elementary schools at random times. So I put something out. I said, look, I want the midnight shift going to elementary schools in the morning at drop-off to have a presence. Number one, just chat with the parents, say hello to the kids, hand out some baseball cards. And now when we're at schools, nobody's in fear.
Right.
I think in some communities, the police roll up to a school and everybody goes, I wonder what's wrong here. And in Norwood, nobody says that because we're always there.
Right.
We're
Makes
always
sense.
there. So there's just a broad range of benefits. But the foot patrol, has been a mainstay of our department. I know it'll continue after I've left.
So you were the head of the Massachusetts Chief of Police Association at one point, no?
Yes, I was the president
Yeah.
in 2016 and a vice president for 3 years before that.
And did you also do national?
Yes, I'm on the board of directors at
Okay, I
the
knew that. I just couldn't remember what the connection was.
International Association of Chiefs of Police.
And tell me why that's valuable to us.
Oh, I just can't. It's a great organization. We have 32,000 members worldwide, 173 countries. There's about 30 of us on the board of directors. Commissioner Cox from Boston is on it. Michael Moore, who's the chief in LAPD. There's just all sorts of wonderful people that I've had a chance to meet. But to be at a conference and walk up and talk to the chief of the LAPD and talk a little bit about, last time we were at the conference, one of the issues was no-knock warrants and drug warrants and SWAT and that kind of thing. And he and I would have a conversation about it. And what a wonderful opportunity to then bring back his breadth of experience.
Right.
And maybe get something from talking to me. Probably not. I got more from talking to him.
I doubt it.
But it was that's just been a great that's a great organization, and it's supposed to serve a 3-year term. I'm in my fourth 3-year term, so I'm one of the most senior members of the board, and we meet 3 times around the country, and then the fourth is actually at the annual conference. I was also asked a few years ago, 2018, to become chair of the firearms committee for ICP. So it meant that last year I was asked to go to the White House 3 times because President Biden was appointing a new ATF director, releasing an executive order, that sort of thing, and I was asked to attend to represent. And that's kind of I think kind of cool for Norwood and for the Norwood Police to have their chief go to the White
Sure.
House and attend some of that stuff. You saw the Senate gun bill just recently came out, and now I think is probably heading to a conference committee. Spent a lot of time on Zoom calls with the Senate President's office and Senator Cream's office, and able to bring some of the knowledge that I have gained through my experience at IACP to be able to talk about, listen, this change to the state gun law will have this desired effect, and here's why. If you add frames and receivers to the definition of a firearm, then you don't have to test fire the gun before trial, which will allow a DA to expedite trials of people who unlawfully carry firearms,
Right.
which will help in gun-involved street crime, right? So, and that's just only one example of one of the things that made it into the Senate gun bill that I thought that I and others like me could bring to that. So that's just been a really a marvelous experience to firearms committee and to be on the board.
Now, you've talked about the school resource officer, and there are some communities that don't want police around their schools. I don't get that. Why, I guess?
I don't get it either. So there's this, I think it's largely a myth, but there's the school to prison pipeline concept where, well, if you have police in schools, they'll be arresting your students, And if you arrest more students more of the time, they're going to go to prison faster, and they're going to come out of prison as hardened criminals, and there's that kind of theory. And I think there are police departments out there that send their, send officers into the schools and hey, listen, you see an offense being committed, you make an arrest. It's not like that really in most of Massachusetts, and that's not the model we use. There's Officer Baguma with his puppy, and then there's Officer John Rooney, who just took over for Officer Jamie Mahoney here at the high school. It's really all about working with the staff, trying to serve students who might have needs, beyond the average student, and trying to make sure that they're safe in school and that they can learn in a safe environment. So and particularly then after the whole George Floyd death in Minneapolis, and you saw protests against the police, you saw a lot of pushback against the police, and one of these was no more SROs. And then you saw some cities passing ordinances that there would be no police in the schools, and honestly, a lot of those cities have really suffered. They've seen crime in the schools go up. I think you're seeing that in Boston.
Yes.
Right? No question, there's shootings and stabbings and that sort of thing, because Boston police aren't in the schools. Those schools would be safer if they were. And you listen, the superintendent and the principals can come to an understanding with the chief, and we have a great working relationship here in Norwood. We're really all on the same page. We all think alike. We talk with each other frequently. We're all on the same page, and we're all there. We're all there for the kids. The kids who come to the school, they are the number one priority, and we are all there. We all understand that. We're all there for the kids.
Yeah, your SROs have just the right attitude. You can just tell. I've been substitute teaching here for about a month now.
Oh, good.
And I see it, and I see, there's no fear of the SROs here. They welcome them, and they want the help, and
The other thing we've done, and Deputy Chief Padden came up with this idea, which I think is a stroke of brilliance, and we actually had him go out and speak at a national conference a couple of years ago about it. He created a school liaison officer, and they're full-time patrol officers, but they've stepped forward and volunteered to be a liaison with an elementary school principal. We give them the same training the SROs get, but their full-time job is patrol. But that means that if the principal is having a problem with a parent's being served a restraining order, people aren't lining up their cars the right way for pickup and drop off, instead of calling the station and having a radio car come by, they call the SLO on their cell phone and say, can you give me a hand with this? And the SLOs are right on it. And they also see it as a potential step to an SRO position later on in their careers. So they're all there because they want to be there.
Right.
And they work closely with the SROs. And it's really been a great, and if one of the SROs takes vacation time, we take one of the school liaison officers and plug them in. So it's just a great program.
So looking back, and it doesn't have to be in Norwood, but looking back, what would you say the thing you're most proud of?
Our people.
Yeah, you've worked with some great ones.
Well, yeah, we're in the people business.
Yeah.
And you talk to a cop who goes, I just don't like the public, or I'm not that, or I don't like kids, or they're in the wrong line of work. We have, I'll talk about Norwood now, Norwood presently. We've got great.
Not Norwood now's Facebook, just
not that
Norwood
one,
presently.
The Norwood presently. That's why I went back. Yeah, we've just got great people, and when I said what are the three compliments, and one is the foot patrol, the other one is, we bumped into your officers, just like you said. Bumped into your officers that they're friendly, they're polite, they're helpful, and I know if I needed to call them, I'd be confident that they're trustworthy. They know what they're doing. They're extremely well trained. They're very well equipped. We are all on the same page. Like culturally, we don't have a divide between like the old guys and the new guys, or the day guys and the night guys, or the patrol guys and nobody talks to detectives. And it can be that way in some places, and it's not like that with us. We are one department on one mission, and everybody works together. And I'm just immensely proud of our people. So that's the answer. The third, by the way, people will ask, well, what was the third? The third is our officers' appearance, and I'm kind of a little natty about that.
Yeah.
I admit that, and I told everybody when I arrived, hey, look, you're going to be squared away uniforms. Everybody's going to dress exactly the same. I'm going to dress the way I expect you to dress. Put your hat on when you get out of the car. It's a sign of respect to the officers who were here before you. It's a sign of respect to the public. You know what I mean? And when you walk down the street or you get out of a car, I want the public to look at you in a certain way. because you bring with it an image.
Right.
And that's the way they look. We won't put a car on the road if it's missing a hubcap. It comes off the line, right? Because it's cars and the uniforms and the appearance, and that's our face to the public. So those are the three compliments.
Interesting. Is there something, and maybe there isn't? I remember when John Carroll retired, I asked him this question too. Is there anything you wish you had done that in your mind is still not quite complete?
I wish I learned to speak Portuguese. But it's true. When I came here, I swore to myself I would learn to speak Portuguese so I'd be able to converse with the Brazilian folks a little bit better, or at all.
Yeah.
And I put Rosetta Stone on my phone. I think it's still on my phone. But you have to like talk into it, listen to it, and I never have that much time, it seems. And I just never got there. I wish I could speak Portuguese so I could converse with folks from Brazil in their own language. Other than that, I look at, we took the department out of civil service, so it's different. We hire and promote differently, and I've been through that in Wellesley with Chief Cunningham, 2009. So in 2014, we took the Norwood police out. Now we've gone into a rolling exam that's always rolling. You can really check in any time and take an exam, have the score sent to us. We're really recruiting right now to fill some vacancies. We as a result, we have a much broader hiring pool. We've been able to hire really good people. We promote differently. We don't do it by we have an exam, but it's not by exam alone, like civil services. So I think that's been a big accomplishment. And I'd like to think that if there was something that meant that much to me, that I thought was that important, that I would have made it my business to get it done. Hopefully, I'm not leaving too much behind. There's always unfinished work. And I've said that, Deputy Chief Patton. I said, you understand, we'll never be done.
Right.
I never go home with my work completed. I always have stuff that I didn't get to today.
Oh, yeah. How's training different now?
So they go to the academy. When I went, it was 12 weeks. And now it's better part of 5.5 months, 720 hours. The academy is a little bit more role play oriented. And now they've put it in modules. So they don't just teach you criminal law of domestic violence and then causes of domestic violence and then role play the week that you graduate. They put it into modules so that the law and department policy and what causes it, and now, play through some scenarios so that the structure of the academy is different. When I came on the department, we didn't have field training. When I was a brand new sergeant, of course, I just read the sergeant's exam, and I had read about field training, and we didn't have field training in Norwood. And we were bringing on a new officer. Now I don't remember who it was, but I approached Brian Cole. I don't know if you remember him. And because the lieutenant said to me, when a new guy comes out of the academy, we put him with somebody different every night so they learn all the ways to do the job. There's something to be said for that. But I said, why don't we put him with a guy who does the job really well?
Yeah.
And so they kind of chuckle. So we put this poor new officer with Brian Cole, who was joined at the hip every night from the 4 to 12. And it started off really like field training is now. You just sit there and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, and you listen and you watch. And that's phase 1. And phase 2 is, I'm going to let you do some of the stuff and I'm going to guide you. And phase 3 is almost, you go ahead and pretend I'm not here. And that's how we phase people through field training. Field training, in my view, is as or maybe more important than the academy. It's where the rubber really meets the road. You've got your baseline from the academy, and you understand the law and procedure, and that's great. Now we're going to show you how we do it here in Norwood. We're going to apply all that stuff here, right? Here's your tactics. Here's your law. Here's your department policy. Here's what the public thinks of us. Here's how we operate in that environment. And then, of course, most people don't realize this in Massachusetts, we're mandated to do 40 hours of training per officer per year. And when I came back here as chief, and during my time when I was here in Norwood, we would take 2 officers off the road every week, and we would ship them out to a regional academy where there were 1 or 2 officers from every department in the area, and they would receive in-service training from the instructors. And some of it was good, and some of it was less than good. And I had not been here long, and I said, no more. I want all the training done here. I want our own instructors. Identify people who want to be instructors, Let's get people who really want to do it. We're going to send them to instructor school. Then we're going to send them to the trainer for their topic. And then we're going to train our own people in our own training room. We'll bring in pizza for lunch. We're going to work right through lunch. And we're going to do it here. We're going to have expertise in the building in all of these topic areas. And it'll be our people teaching our people. And instead of saying, Fred and Ann were in a car, driving down Route 123, you say, no, it's, this guy and that guy were in, we're in such and such in Manhattan Street. You know what I mean? And so our scenarios and the way we talk about cases, and when case law comes down, it's not just what the SJC said, it's how this applied to that domestic we handled 6 months ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? And how
Yeah, that's good.
And so our in-service training now was completely, I was there today. Speaking of Chris Padden, our Deputy Chief Padden, he was teaching legal update with Patrick Bishop. We also always have 2 instructors in the room because you just can't do a day by yourself.
Right.
So we have 2. We've just redone our training room with some capital money. So all the AV has been replaced. We were using the stuff that was in the building. That building's 20 years old now.
Jeez.
And so we've replaced all the AV, we've replaced the shades, we've had the place painted, facilities, did a lot of stuff. It came out great. And so we do all of our in-service training in the building. Now, aside from the 40 hours, we're always sending people out. We're sending them out to trainings elsewhere. I can say this, we just sent 2 officers to California last week to go to 4 days of training on something called ICAT, which is integration of communication, assessment, and tactics. And it's for mental illness calls where the person is armed with something less than a firearm. And it's put on by the Police Executive Research Forum in Washington, D.C. And we sent 2 out there that go, learn everything you can about it, become instructors, come back here with the program, we're going to do ICAT here. So that's that's a level above
Right.
anything you're going to see, in the region as far as handling mental illness calls. All of our officers have been through mental health first aid. Over half our patrol force has been to a full 40 hours of CIT training, crisis intervention team training. We're going to do mental health first aid again in March. Circle back to it because some officers haven't had it in a few years. We're going to follow that up with ICAT. And in Scotland, where the National Police are called Police Scotland, they don't carry firearms. They have a lot of knife crime. So how do they handle that? Well, they have clear Lexan riot shields in all their cars. Because if they confront somebody with a knife, they can't defend themselves with firearms. And sometimes you confront someone who's mentally ill and they've got a knife. You have to defend yourself. But by the same token, somebody who's in a psychotic break, you hate to, have to shoot a person who, with the right medication in 24 hours in a hospital, would be just fine tomorrow.
Yeah.
So a number of years back, watching this and having seen this in Police Scotland, I ordered riot shields for all the radio cars. We just had a case. I was talking to the selectmen about it last night. It was, I think, last week or the week before. And this young man, again, in the middle of a mental illness episode, his mother called us. He had slashed his throat, slashed one of his wrists, was carrying the knife. It's covered in blood. And the officer put right in their report. We took our riot shields and went in, committed to not shooting him.
Right.
Right. Committed to not doing any damage. Committed to making sure that he got to a hospital, which is where he needs to be. The public needs to rely on us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the buzzword, and I hate to use buzzwords, but seems to be on a lot of these issues, de-escalation, right?
Yeah.
Is that the gist of it, or is that oversimplifying?
Also, de-escalation, so taking somebody who's agitated and bringing them down in a general way, that's what you're talking about. I can tell you sometimes you can't.
Right.
Sometimes you can't. You get there and you have this has been in the news. I could talk about it a little bit, I guess, but we had an officer-involved shooting just before Christmas. And the woman was obviously having some
I remember this well.
psychological issues. We talked to her for 40 minutes. It wasn't getting any better. And in the end, she got shot, and not because we gave up. She got shot because she just took the gun, pointed it at us, and started marching towards us,
Right.
and got far closer than she had been through the previous 40 minutes, and the officer who fired had no choice. He did exactly what anybody should have done. I was very proud that one officer fired one shot. That was it. There was not a barrage. There was not. And the officers rushed to her aid, gave her immediate medical aid, including chest seals on both wounds to prevent a collapsed lung. Fire got her to the airport. Med flight got her to Boston. They operated that night. She was visiting with relatives the next day. So, that's...
Yeah, you can't always de-escalate every time.
You can't always de-escalate.
Yeah.
When we think we can, we do. And one of these officers, Ryan Marchand, who just got back from that ICAT training, was, and he was talking about the training and so forth. And he was talking about, what we already do here. You're never going to have a sergeant saying, "Are you guys clear yet? You guys clear yet?" If they're still on the board, it shows in red. They're still in the red. Are they still tied up on that call? They're still tied up. We'll work around it. We'll stack calls. We'll send other people to calls. We'll pull other people to handle those calls. You've been off with that same call 30 minutes. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Take whatever time you need to resolve it safely. And that's just the way we operate. So we de-escalate when we can, typically through language, typically by backing up, time is on our side, and that sort of thing. And yes, we train in de-escalation.
So what's next?
For me?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of sleeping in.
I don't know you'll be able to.
People have said to me, "Oh, yeah, you must have a job offer." I don't. I began thinking about this departure, last fall. Didn't tell anybody. About 3 people knew. Deputy Chief Patton knew before he went to the FBI Academy. I sat him down. I said, "Look, here's like a rough sketch. Here's what I'm thinking of," just so he'd be prepared. And my wife, and my son was on the police department. My other kids, I talked in generalities, but I texted one of them. I said I just put in my notice that I'm going to retire from the police department. He said, "Wow, you're close to the vest." My son Kevin, because I talked in generalities, but he didn't know I was going to go.
Yeah.
Notify Mr. Mizuko that day. So I really don't. The 30th is my last day. May 1st, the new chief will be sworn in. I'm going to attend that. I hope the other 2 chiefs can make it too. I talked a lot about Chief de Blasio, but I worked for Chief King only for a much shorter period of time before I left to go to Wellesley. I'm hoping those guys can be there. That'd be the 3 of us, the 3 of us as well as the incoming chief. And then Thursday and Friday, I have a class to teach at a 2-week school for new narcotics detectives that I've been teaching at since the 80s. And so that's something I do on the side. I usually take a vacation day and I go teach. So I'm going to teach those 2 days. The weeks that follow, I hope just be able to take a little bit more like relaxation time, a little bit more beach time down the Cape a little bit maybe. My wife and I have been talking about, maybe taking a trip somewhere. We really haven't done an awful lot of traveling. And I'd like to do a little bit more, just go someplace to relax. I don't seek any sympathy at all. I don't say it for this reason, but this job is, can be almost, I don't say all-consuming, but it's on your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the time, And my life is so much structured around, if I were to go somewhere socially, I might, 95% of the time I have a Diet Coke because if I'm driving my cruiser, I never have a sip of alcohol. If my wife says I'll drive, it's maybe a glass of wine through the entire evening, because if I've got to come in, I got to come in.
Right.
And the example I've used, something happens to one of my people, it can't be, hey, the chief would love to be here, but he's had a few. That can't ever happen. You know what I mean? It can't ever happen. So, and it all, my phone rings and it's 2:00 in the morning. I look at the clock. It's 2:00 in the morning. It's never ever good.
No.
It's never good. And our guys and women do a wonderful job. Police department does a wonderful job, but it does hang over you a bit, And I don't think I've suffered really. I love the job. I've told people I love Fridays and I love Mondays. Like I love coming back in.
Yeah.
Anyway, I usually give an answer that's too long for the question, but the short answer is I don't have an immediate plan. So I want to do a little bit of relaxing. That I do want to stay engaged. I'm going to keep the firearms committee with IECP.
Good.
So my term would be up next fall, and the president asked me to stay on with that, and I will. I'd like to stay involved with our Mass Chiefs. I've worked a lot on legislation over the years, and this last work on the gun bill has been great. So that'd be volunteer type stuff. I'd like to continue to do some of that. I do a little bit of teaching on the side here and there. I'd like
You'll keep busy, I know that.
Yeah, I'll keep busy.
Yeah.
And days I'm not busy, you know.
So, last question. What would you say to somebody who's thinking about becoming a police officer?
Yeah, I'm only a little bit torn. Personally, I think it's the best job in the world. And I've told people it's the best job in the world. You know, it's becoming a little more difficult now. You know, our officers are sometimes going off on calls, and the person who greets them has a phone like this. If you put the phone down, I'll be able to see your face. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you can record me if you want, but I just want to like tell me why you called 911. You know, and that I think it adds a level of stress. I must tell you the very brand new post commission in Massachusetts generates a bit of stress. It's built by statute so that there's minimal police experience on the commission, and we kind of don't know what's down the road.
Right.
The executive director and the staff, I think, has done a marvelous job with a very difficult statute. I really think he has. And then you've got a commission. I think that they probably all, you know, their heart's in the right place, but you really don't know that an officer does something and it can go like that. You know, all of a sudden something's happened in front of you, and you do something and it's over. And then a commission of 9 people, oftentimes an executive session, will take a look at it, and over the course of months will rule on what you did.
Right.
And that's a huge. And when the commission, this is by statute, if the commission decertifies an officer, they enter you in the National Decertification Index, which essentially blocks you from law enforcement employment nationwide. And that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I'll say.
It's pretty heavy. Now, you know, like I said, my son Mark is on the job. I'm incredibly proud of him. I'm proud of all of my kids. I get a boot out of him that he's on the job, and he's doing well, and he likes it. But there's that side of it, and the next generation is going to have to deal with that.
Right.
You know, the bit about being a chief. You know, just when the whole George Floyd thing happened, and a lot of chiefs left office. You know, and I was talking to a group of them one time. I said, "Where are you going?" Like, right? Where are
Yeah.
you going? This is when they need you.
Right.
Your people need you. Your community needs you. Right? Last couple of years, it's been kind of a cakewalk. It hasn't been a big deal. Right now, it's like this chaos. Right? There's protests, and there's people speaking out, and there's articles in the newspaper, and there's all this stuff, and you know, officers coming to. They're watching the nightly news at night where they're burning radio cars. They come to work the next day, and the people in Norwood will buy you a coffee.
Right.
That's exactly what it was like, by the way. Is, you know, I would go to Dunkin' Donuts, and they would say, "Oh, that woman just paid for your coffee." Like day after day after day. The people really appreciated us. And so it was like, then the officer go home and watch the news at night, and then they come back in the morning.
Yeah.
Somebody from Norwood would buy you breakfast. So I said to other chiefs, like, where are you going? Like, now your community needs you, your people need you. You know what I mean? We've got a road ahead of us. But so the job has challenges, but it's you know, I've enjoyed it. In my 48th year, I wouldn't have changed anything. I've enjoyed the departments where I've worked, the people I've worked with.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service, number one.
Oh, you're welcome.
And, you know, I just retired last June, and my job took me all over the state.
Sure.
And I met a lot of the chiefs of police because we were doing schools. And I was always so proud to say, I live in Norwood, and I always got the same reception. Oh, Chief Brooks is the best. And you know, it gave me a sense of pride that, you know, your colleagues, your peers think so highly of you as we do here. And it's well placed, I think so.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we'll miss you, but it sounds like, you know, there's a plan, and I think a good plan of succession.
It's a very good plan for the town, very good plan for the department. The first day I'm gone, everybody will come in a roll call.
Right.
And report to the sergeant. The sergeant will give them their assignments, and off they'll go. The department's bigger than any of us.
Right.
1896. You know, so everything will be fine, and I'll be around. I love the town of Norwood. I'll be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, that wraps up this special edition of Norwood Digest. Chief Brooks is leaving us, leaving the position. I don't want to say he's leaving us. He's leaving the position, but he'll be around if we need him. So thanks to Chief Brooks. Thanks to the great crew down here at NCM. And thank you at home for allowing us into your living rooms. Good day and keep safe.